The quiet suburban neighborhood lay still under the faint glow of the streetlights. I stood by the window, watching Lauren pack for yet another one of her mysterious trips to Philadelphia. Her behavior had been getting more suspicious lately, and it bothered me like an itch I couldn't scratch. "Lauren," I said, trying to sound casual, "where are you really going?" She paused, her hands trembling slightly as she zipped up her bag. "Just a quick trip, Bill. Nothing to worry about," she replied, avoiding my gaze. But I couldn't shake off my unease. "You've been doing this every week, and you never tell me where you're going. It's not like you." She bit her lip, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. "I promise, Bill, it's nothing you need to concern yourself with." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "Lauren, it's hard not to be concerned when you're so secretive about it. Bradley and Terry are starting to notice too." "I'll talk to them, make sure they understand," she said. But the unease lingered. This wasn't the woman I had married, and I knew I couldn't let it go any longer. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to enlist the help of a private investigator. I found Frank, a grizzled man with a reputation for getting results. We met in his dimly lit office downtown, the scent of old leather and cigarette smoke hanging in the air. Frank leaned back in his worn-out leather chair, studying me with sharp, calculating eyes. "What's the story, Bill?" he asked in his gravelly voice, betraying a lifetime of unravelling secrets. I cleared my throat, my nerves making my words stumble. "My wife, Lauren. She's been making weekly trips to Philadelphia, but she won't tell me where she's going or why. I need to know what's going on." Frank nodded, reaching for a file on his cluttered desk. "I'll look into it." "But it won't be cheap, you understand. Money was no object. At this point, I needed answers." "Do whatever it takes, Frank. I just need to know the truth." Weeks passed as Frank delved into the shadows of Lauren's secretive escapades. His phone calls and discreet surveillance uncovered the unsettling truth. Lauren was rendezvousing with a man named Kyle at the Risen Hotel in Philadelphia. The knots in my stomach tightened as I listened to Frank's report. One evening, we met at a quiet coffee shop on the outskirts of town to discuss his findings. Frank slid a manila envelope across the table to me. "Here's what I've got, Bill," he said, his voice low. I opened the envelope and sifted through the photographs and documents, my heart sinking with each revelation. Pictures of Lauren and Kyle together, their faces close, and a receipt from the Risen Hotel. I couldn't deny it any longer. Something was terribly wrong. "That hotel, the Risen?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you know about it?" Frank leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "It's where they meet. Kyle leaves a room key for her under a payphone. It's discreet, Bill." I clenched my fists, anger and hurt welling up inside me. "I want to confront her, Frank. I need to know the truth." Frank sighed, the weight of my desperation weighing on him. "Be careful, Bill. Confrontations like this can go south quickly." I nodded, my determination set. It was time to get to the bottom of this mystery and confront Lauren about her inexplicable rendezvous with Kyle at the Risen Hotel. With Frank's findings in hand, I felt a mounting sense of urgency. Bradley and Terry were on board, determined to get answers too. The three of us sat around the kitchen table, poring over the photographs and documents Frank had gathered. Terry, the younger of my two sons, broke the tense silence. "Dad, we can't let her keep doing this. We need to find out what's going on." Bradley, the older and more level-headed of the two, nodded in agreement. "But we have to be careful, Dad. We don't know what we're walking into." I appreciated their support, and their caution was well-founded. "You're right, boys," I said, my voice filled with determination. "We need a plan." We spent hours strategizing, piecing together the best approach to confront Lauren without tipping her off. The plan was simple. We would follow her discreetly to the Risen Hotel on her next trip to Philadelphia, then confront her when she met Kyle the night before. Our operation, Bradley asked. Dad, are you sure about this? It's a big risk. I looked at my sons, their concern mirrored in their eyes. I can't let this go on any longer, Bradley. We deserve the truth, and so does she. Terry chimed in, his voice firm. We'll have each other's backs, Dad. I nodded, grateful for the support of my sons. Tomorrow, we find out what's really going on. The next morning, we loaded up the car and headed towards Philadelphia, our hearts heavy with anticipation as we parked near the Ryzen Hotel. We felt a mixture of anxiety and resolve. The hour seemed to drag on as we watched from a discreet distance, hidden behind tinted windows. Lauren arrived at the hotel, and we held our breaths, our eyes locked onto her. She looked nervous, her gaze darting around as she checked her phone repeatedly. Minutes felt like hours as we waited for Kyle to arrive. The tension in the car was palpable as we watched and waited, knowing that the truth was just moments away. The minutes ticked by agonizingly slow as we watched Lauren nervously waiting for Kyle at the Ryzen Hotel. Our car was parked discreetly nearby, hidden behind the cover of tinted windows. The anticipation in the car was thick, and I could see the anxiety in my son's eyes mirrored my own. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kyle's black sedan pulled into the hotel parking lot. My heart raced as we watched him exit the car and approached Lauren. He handed her a small envelope and spoke in hushed tones. "This is it," I whispered to Bradley and Terry. "Let's go." With adrenaline coursing through our veins, we exited the car and approached Lauren, who was caught completely off guard. Her eyes widened with shock as she saw us approaching, and her voice trembled as she tried to maintain her composure. "Dad? Bradley? Terry?" she stammered, her face paling. I tried to keep my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. "Lauren, fancy seeing you here. We thought we'd surprise you with lunch." Bradley and Terry nodded in agreement, but their faces betrayed a mixture of concern and confusion. Lauren, clearly caught in a lie, struggled to find an explanation. "I was just meeting a friend," she stuttered, her eyes darting nervously between us. Terry spoke up, his voice tinged with skepticism. "Is a friend who leaves you envelopes under a payphone?" I could see the panic in Lauren's eyes as she realized she was trapped. The tension in the air was suffocating, and something had to give. The tense confrontation with Lauren had reached its peak. But before any further revelations could unfold, the situation took an unexpected turn. Just as Lauren was struggling to find words to explain herself, the entrance of a furious woman disrupted the already charged atmosphere. Beth, Kyle's wife, stormed into the hotel lobby, her eyes blazing with anger. She clutched a bag filled with Kyle's clothes, her face twisted with a mix of betrayal and righteous indignation. She had caught her husband in the act of cheating, and now she was here to confront him. "Kyle!" she shouted, her voice echoing through the lobby as heads turned to stare. "You lying, cheating scumbag!" Kyle's face drained of colour as he realised he had been caught in the act, and his affair with Lauren was no longer a secret. Meanwhile, Lauren seemed caught between a rock and a hard place, her eyes darting between us and the furious Beth. I stepped forward, trying to maintain a semblance of control. "Beth, this isn't what it looks like." Beth's eyes narrowed as she turned her wraith toward Lauren. "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like. You home-wrecking __." She held out a key card, her voice trembling with anger. "Take your damn room key back, Lauren." Lauren hesitated, her hand trembling as she accepted the key card from Beth. The realization that her involvement with Kyle was exposed seemed to weigh heavily on her, and she had no choice but to face the consequences. Terry leaned in and whispered to me, "Dad, what do we do now?" I shook my head, still, processing the whirlwind of emotions and revelations. "I don't know, Terry, but one thing's for sure, this mess just got a whole lot messier." As Beth continued to berate Kyle and Lauren stood there, visibly shaken, it became clear that the consequences of this confrontation were far from over. The tangled web of deceit was unraveling before our eyes, and none of us could predict where it would lead next. The confrontation at the Risen Hotel had taken an unexpected and chaotic turn with the arrival of Beth, Kyle's enraged wife, as Beth paraded Kyle and Lauren stood there, visibly shaken. Feeling overwhelmed and guilty, the hotel lobby became a battleground of emotions. Terry whispered to me, his voice filled with concern, "Dad, what do we do now?" I struggled to find an answer, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of the rapidly unfolding events. "We need to talk to Lauren, find out what's really going on." Approaching Lauren cautiously, the tension in the air was almost suffocating. "Lauren," I began, my voice softer than before, "we need to have an honest conversation about all of this." She looked at me with tears in her eyes, her guilt evident. I don't know what to say, Bill." Before we could delve deeper into the conversation, Lauren's phone rang, and she hastily answered it. Her expression grew even more distressed as she spoke in hushed tones. "What's going on, Lauren?" I asked, my patience waning. She hung up the phone and looked at me with a mixture of fear and confusion. "I need to go, Bill. I can't explain right now." Without waiting for a response, Lauren abruptly left the table and hurried toward the hotel's exit, leaving her belongings behind. Panic gripped me as I watched her disappear into the night. "Bradley, Terry," I called out, "we can't let her go." We rushed after her, but she had vanished. The hotel staff and security were alerted, and the police were called in, but despite our efforts, Lauren remained missing. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, but there was no sign of her. The police investigation yielded no answers, and it became clear that Lauren had gone into hiding. The mysterious disappearance only deepened the enigma surrounding her actions. One evening, as we sat in our now eerily empty home, Terry spoke up. "Dad, do you think she left voluntarily, or was she forced to disappear?" I sighed, the weight of the question bearing down on me. "I wish I knew, Terry, but one thing's for sure, we're in this alone now. We may never find out what really happened." As the days turned into years, the shadow of Lauren's disappearance loomed over our lives, casting a long, dark uncertainty that seemed impossible to dispel. 2 long years had passed since the fateful confrontation at the Risen Hotel, and the questions that haunted my mind remained unanswered. Lauren was still missing, and the emptiness in our lives grew more profound with each passing day. The once vibrant home we had shared felt like a mausoleum of memories filled with Lauren's untouched belongings. Her scent lingered in the air, a haunting reminder of the life we had once shared. The boys had grown, their faces marked by the pain and confusion of their mother's inexplicable disappearance. One evening, Bradley broke the silence that had become all too familiar in our household. "Dad," he began, his voice tinged with sadness, "do you ever wonder if we did the right thing by confronting her?" I nodded, unable to refute that logic. "Yes, we did, but I can't help but wonder if we pushed her into something worse."